past that I won't bother to talk about, except that it had something to do with the miserably weary split up, and my feeling that everything was dead. With the coming of Dean began the part of my life that you could call my life on the road. Before that, I'd often dreamed of going west to see the country, always vaguely planning and never taking off. Dean is the perfect guy for the road because he actually was born on the road, and when his parents were passing through Salt Lake City in 1926 in a jalopy on their way to Los Angeles. First reports of him came to me through Jack Kerouac, who'd shown me a few letters from him written in a New Mexico reform school. I was tremendously interested in the letters because they were so naively and sweetly I fucked up, I'm sorry. Because they so naively and sweetly asked Chad to teach him all about Nietzsche and the wonderful intellectual things that Chad knew. At one point, Carlo and I talked about the letters and wondered if we would ever meet the strange Dean Moriarty. I avoided saying it the first time. I hope I pronounced it correctly. This is all far back, when Dean was not the way he is today, and he was a young jail kid, shrouded in mystery. When the news came that Dean was out of reform school and coming to New York for the first time, also there was talk that he had just married a girl called Mary Lou. One day, I was hanging around the campus, and Chad and Tim Gray told me Dean was staying in a cold water bath in East Harlem, the Spanish Harlem. Dean had arrived the night before, the first time in New York, with his beautiful little sharp chick, Mary Lou. They got off the Greyhound bus at the 50th Street and cut around the corner, looking for a place to eat, and went right in Hector's. And since then, Hector's cafeteria has always been a big symbol of New York for Dean. They spent money on a beautiful big glazed cakes and cream puffs. All this time, Dean was telling Mary Lou things like this. Now, darling, here we are in New York, and although I haven't quite told you everything that I was thinking about when we crossed Missouri, and especially at the point when we passed the Boonville Reformatory, which reminded me of my jail problem, it is absolutely necessary now to postpone all those leftover things concerning our personal love things, and at once begin thinking of specific work-life plans, and so on in the ways that he had in those early days. I went to the Coldwater flat with the boys, and Dean came to the door in his shorts. Mary Lou was jumping off the couch. Dean had dispatched the occupant of the apartment to the kitchen, probably to make coffee, while he proceeded with his love problems. For to him, sex was the one and only holy and important thing in life, although he had to sweat and curse to make a living and so on. You saw that in the way he stood bobbing his head, always looking down, nodding like a young boxer to instructions, to make you think he was listening to every word, throwing in 1,000 yeses and that's right. My first impression of Dean was of a young Gene Autry, trim, thin-hipped, blue-eyed, with a real Oklahoma accent, a sideburns hero of the snowy West. In fact, he'd just been working on a ranch at Walls in Colorado before marrying Mary Lou and coming east. Mary Lou was a pretty blonde with immense ringlets of hair like a sea of golden tresses. She sat there on the edge of the couch with her hands hanging in her lap, and her smoky blue country eyes fixed in a wide stare because she was in evil gray New York bad that she'd heard about back west. And waiting, like a long-bodied, emaciated, Modigliani surrealist woman in a serious room, calmly, smoking butts from ashtrays in the grey light of a gloomy day. Dean got up nervously, paced around, thinking, and decided the thing to do was to have Mary Lou make breakfast and sweep the floor. In other words, we've got to get on the ball, darling. What I'm saying, otherwise it'll be fluctuating in lack of true knowledge or crystallization of our plans. Then I went away. During the following week, he confided in Chad King that I absolutely had to learn how to write from him. Chad said I was a writer, and he should come to me for advice. Meanwhile, Dean had gotten a job in a parking lot, had a fight with Mary Lou in their Hoboken apartment. God knows why they went there. And she was so mad and so down deep vindictive that she reported to the police Oh no, someone's coughing. Did you hear that? That's the kids on the baby monitor. Babysitting. I don't know if you can hear the white noise and such. All apologies. I'm not planning to edit this, so you'll get to hear all my mistakes and the ambiance of the room. I hope you don't mind. I really like lo-fi earbud ASMR, so I'm hoping this is sufficient. Okay. Back to on the road. She was so mad and so deep down vindictive that she reported to the police some false, trumped-up, hysterical, crazy charge, and Dean had to lamb from Hoboken, so he had no place to live. He came right out to Paterson, New Jersey, where I was living with my aunt, and one night while I was studying, there was a knock on the door, and there was Dean, bowing, shuffling, obsequiously. What the fuck? How do you say that? Obsequiously. OBSEQUIOUSLY. However you say that. In the dark of the hall, saying, "Hello. You remember me, Dean Moriarty? I've come to ask you to show me how to write." "And where's Mary Lou?" I asked. And Dean said she'd apparently hoard a few dollars together and gone back to Denver. The whore! So we went out to have a few beers because we couldn't talk like we wanted to talk in front of my aunt, who sat in the living room reading her paper. She took one look at Dean and decided that he was a madman. In the bar I told Dean, "Hell, man, I know very well you didn't come to me only to want to become a writer, and after all, what do I really know about it, except that you've got to stick to it with the energy of a penny addict?" And he said, "Yes, of course, I know exactly what you mean, and in fact, all those problems have occurred to me. But the thing that I want is the realization of those factors that should one depend on Schopenhauer's dichotomy for an inwardly realized." And so on in that way, things I understood not a bit, and he himself didn't. In those days, he really didn't know what he was talking about. That is to say, he was a young jail kid, all hung up on the wonderful possibilities of becoming a real intellectual. And he liked to talk in the tone and using the words, but in a jumbled way, that he had heard from real intellectuals. Although, mind you, he wasn't so naive as that and all other things, and it took him just a few months with Carlo Marx to become completely in there with all the terms and jargon. Nonetheless, we understood each other and on other levels of madness, and I agreed that he could stay at my house until he found a job, and furthermore, we agreed to go out west sometime. That was the winter of 1947. One night when Dean ate supper at my house, with you as soon as I finished this chapter. It was one of the best chapters in the book. Then I dressed off and we flew to New York to meet some girls. As we rode in the bus in the weird phosphorescent void of the Lincoln Tunnel, we leaned on each other with fingers waving and yelled and talked excitedly. And I was beginning to get the bug like Dean. He was simply a youth tremendously excited with life, and though he was a con man, he was only conning because he wanted so much to live. And to get involved with people who would otherwise pay no attention to him. He was conning me and I knew it, for room and board and how to write, etc. And he knew I knew. This has been the basis of our relationship. But I didn't care, and we got along fine. No pestering, no catering. We tiptoed around each other like heartbreaking new friends. I began to learn from him as much as he probably learned from me. As far as my work was concerned, he said, "Go ahead, everything you do is great." He watched over my shoulder as I wrote stories, yelling, "Yes, that's right, wow, man, and phew," and wiped his face with his handkerchief. Man, wow, there's so many things to do, so many things to write. How do you even begin to get it all down without modified restraints and all hung up like literary inhibitions and grammatical fears? I think someone's awake. I hear crying. Oh my goodness, there's the little boys running outside. Can you hear them? They're screaming and running and having a good time. I hope they didn't wake the baby. I don't think they should. They're so cute. They're running around. They've got their shoes off. It's one of the first warm days of the year. They're trying to get into the shed. I love to see kids playing outside. I feel like so many of them are sequestered to their bad land. It's nice to see them having fun. Anyway, we'll get back to this. It's kind of hard to read. It's very stream of consciousness. In the biography section I read before I started the section, it was explained that Kerouac wrote, he was a binge writer. That's not the language they used, but that's essentially what he would do. He would, get high and, oh my gosh, the little boys are going crazy. I think they were trying to get into a shed that wasn't theirs. They were trying to break into a shed. Off they go. That's silly. I would love to be 11 again and live without consequences. You can break an inner and nothing happens to you. Anyway. Yeah, this is kind of a challenging piece. It feels a little bit unedited. Everything is so dense. I read Desolation Angels. It's the only Kerouac I've ever read. Oh, and I've read Tristessa, I can't remember how to pronounce it. Both of those were similar to this, but I'm finding it challenging to read it out loud. I'm sure you guys have noticed I'm sneaking in little conjunctions that do not exist, but I'm really not planning to edit this video, so my apologies. Anyway, I'll keep going. Where was I? That's right, man. Now you're talking. And a kind of holy lightning I saw flashing from his excitement and his visions, which he described so torrentially that people in buses looked around to see the overexcited nut. In the West, he'd spent a third of his time in the pool hall, a third in jail, and a third in the public library. They'd seen him rushing eagerly down the winter was supposed to meet him in a diner and didn't show up. We went to his parking lot where he had a few things to do, change his clothes in the shack in the back, and spruce up a bit in front of a cracked mirror, and so on. And then we took off. And that was the night Dean met Carlo Marx. A tremendous thing happened when Dean met Carlo Marx. Two keen minds that they are, they took to each other at the drop of a hat. Two piercing eyes glanced into two piercing eyes. The holy con man with the shining mind, and the sorrowful, poetic con man with the dark mind that is Carlo Marx. From that moment on, I saw very little of Dean, and I was a little sorry too. Their energies met head-on. I was a loud companion, and I couldn't keep up with them. The whole mad swirl of everything that was to come began then. It would mix up all my friends, and all I had left of my family in a big dust cloud over the American night. Carlo told him of old Bull Lee, Elmer Hassel, Shane, Lee in Texas growing weed, Hassel on Rikers Island, Jane wandering on Times Square in a Benson train hallucination, with her baby girl in her arms and ending up in Bellevue. And Dean told Carlo of unknown people in the West like Tommy Stark, the club-footed pool-hall rotation shark, and card player, and queer saint. He told him of Roy Johnson, Big Ed Dunkel, his boyhood buddies, his street buddies, his innumerable girls and sex parties and pornographic pictures, his heroes, heroines, adventures. They rushed down the street together, taking everything in the early way they had, which later became so much sadder and perceptive and blank. But then they danced on the streets like dingle dotties, and I shambled after, as I've been doing all my life, after people who interest me, because the only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time, the ones who never yawn, or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles, exploding like spiders across stars. In the middle you see the blue center light pop, and everybody goes, oh, what they call such young people in Goth's Germany, wanting dearly to learn how to write like Carlo. The first thing you know, Dean was attacking him with great armorous soul. I'm getting distracted by the boys again. I'm so sorry if you can hear them. They're having a lot of fun. Sorry for the interruptions. This is the authentic experience of being read to by me. Okay. Oh, what do they call such young people in Goth's Germany? Wanting dearly to learn how to write like Carlo, the first thing you know, Dean was attacking him with great armorous soul, such as only a con man can have. Now, Carlo, let me speak. Here's what I'm saying. I didn't see them for about 2 weeks, during which time they cemented their relationship to a fiendish all-day, all-night talk proportions. Then came spring, the great time of traveling, and everybody in the scattered gang was getting ready to take one trip or another. I was busily at work on my novel when I came to the halfway mark, after a trip down south with my aunt to visit my brother Rocco. I got ready to travel west for the very first time. Dean had already left. Carlo and I saw him off the 34th Greyhound station. Upstairs they had a place where you could make pictures for a quarter. Carlo took off his glasses and looked sinister. Dean made a profile shot and looked coyly around. I took a straight picture that made me look like a 30-year-old Italian who'd kill anybody who said anything against his mother. This picture Carlo and Dean neatly cut down the middle with a razor, and saved half each in their wallets. Dean was wearing a real Western business suit for his big trip back to Denver. He'd finished his first fling in New York. I say fling, but he only worked like a dog in parking lots. The most fantastic parking lot attendant in the world. He can back a car at 40 miles an hour into a tight squeeze and stop at the wall, jump out, race among fenders, leap into another car, circle at 50 miles an hour in a narrow space, back swiftly into a tight spot, snap the car with the emergency so that you see it bounce as he flies out, then clear to the ticket shack, sprinting like a track star, and a ticket, leap into a newly arrived car before the owner's half out, leap literally under him as he steps out, start the car with the door flapping, and roar off to the next available spot, arc, pop in, break out, run, working like that without pause 8 hours a night, evening rush hours, and after theater rush hours, in greasy wino pants with a frayed fur-lined jacket and beat shoes that flap. Now he'd bought a new suit to go back in, blue with pencil stripes, vest and all, $11 on 3rd Avenue, with a watch and watch chain and a portable typewriter with which he was going to start writing in a Denver rooming house as soon as he could shop there. We had a farewell meal of franks and beans in a 7th Avenue Rikers, and then Dean got on the bus that said Chicago and roared off into the night. There went our Wrangler. I promised myself to go the same way when spring really bloomed and opened up the land, and this was really the way that my whole road experience began, and the things that were to come are too fantastic not to tell. Yes, and it wasn't only because I was a writer and needed new experiences that I wanted to show Dean more. That I wanted to know Dean more, and because my life hanging around the campus had reached the completion of its cycle and was stultified. I've heard that word before, but because somehow, in spite of our difference in character, he reminded me of some long-lost brother. The sight of his suffering, bony face with the long sideburns and the straining, muscular, sweating neck made me remember my boyhood in those dry bumps and swim holes. Sorry, did you hear the ice maker? This isn't my home, it's my first time being here home alone. It's a creaky house. There's lots of unexpected sounds, unfamiliar sounds. It's hard for me to not feel a little uneasy in a house I've never been in before. This is a nice suburban house, but I can't help but get distracted by that ice machine. I don't know what the microphone picks up. I apologize. Once again, this is the authentic, uncut experience of me doing my literature homework, so don't expect a straight shot on this channel. I don't care to edit these. It's just for fun. Okay. I'll stop over-explaining. But if I pause it, just know it's probably because there's something happening outside the window or in the refrigerator. Okay, let's see, where was I? The sight of his suffering, bony face with the long sideburns and his straining, muscular, sweating neck made me remember my boyhood in those dye dumps and swim holes and riversides of Patterson and the Passaic. His sturdy work clothes clung to him so gracefully, as though you couldn't buy a better fit from a custom tailor, but only earn it from the natural tailor of natural joy, and as Dean had in his dresses, and in his excited way of speaking, I heard again the voices of old companions and brothers under the bridge, among the motorcycles, along the wash-lined neighborhood and drowsy doorsteps of afternoon, where corpse near Jane Lee the same, sprawled on the oriental cover of her couch, sniffing at the New Yorker. But Dean's intelligence was every bit as formal and shining and complete, without the tedious intellectualness. And his criminality was not something that sulked and sneered. It was a wild, yea-saying overburst of American joy. It was Western, the West mind, an ode from the plains, something new, long prophesized, long a-coming. He only stole cars for joyride. Besides, all my New York friends were in their negative, nightmarish position of putting down society and giving their tired, bookish, or political, or psychoanalytical reasons. But Dean just raced in society, eager for bread and love. He didn't care one way or the other, as long as I can get that little old cow with that little something down there between her legs, boy. And so long as we can eat, son, you hear me? I'm hungry, I'm starving, let's eat right now. And off we'd rush to eat. Whereof, as saith Ecclesiastes, it is your portion under the sun. A Western kinsman of the sun, Dean, although my aunt warned me that he would get me in trouble. I could hear a new call and see a new horizon, and believe it at my young age. And a little bit of trouble, or even Dean's eventual rejection of me as a buddy, putting me down as he would later, on starving sidewalks and sick beds. What did it matter? I was a young writer, and I wanted to take off. Somewhere along the line, I knew there'd be girls, visions, everything. Somewhere along the line, the pearl would be handed to me. Part 5. I don't know what happens in between this part and the next. I assume they're on the road. Adventures ensue. Epiphanies are had. I don't know. Okay. Part 5. Dean drove from Mexico City and saw Victor again in Georgia. Not Georgia. And pushed that old car all the way to Lake Charles, Louisiana, before the rear end finally dropped on the road as he always had known it would. So he wired Inez for airplane fare and flew the rest of the way. When he arrived in New York with the divorce papers in his hands, he and Inez immediately went right to Newark and got married. And that night, telling her everything was all right and not to worry, and making logics where there was nothing but inestimable, I've never heard that word before, sorrowful sweats, inestimable, never heard that before, sorry that took me aback. He jumped on a bus and roared off again across the awful continent to San Francisco to rejoin Camille and the 2 baby girls. So now he was 3 times married, twice divorced, and living with his second wife. In the fall, I myself started back home from Mexico City, and one night, just over Ladero border in Dilley, Texas, I was standing on the hot road underneath an arc lamp with the summer moths smashing into it, when I heard the sound of footsteps from the darkness beyond, and lo, a tall old man with flowing white hair came clomping by with a back on his back. And when he saw me, he passed. He said, "Go moan for man," and clomped on back to the dark. Did this mean that I should go, at last, on my pilgrimage on foot to the dark roads around America? I struggled and hurried to New York, and one night I was standing in a dark street in Manhattan and called up to the window of a loft where I thought my friends were having a party. But a pretty girl stuck her head out the window and said, "Yes, who is it?" "Sal Paradise," I said, and heard my name resound in the sad and empty street. "Come up," she called, "I'm making hot chocolate." So I went, and there she was, the girl with the pure, innocent, dear eyes that I had always searched for. for so long. We agreed to love each other madly. In the winter, we planned to migrate to San Francisco, bringing all our peat furniture and broken belongings with us in a jalopy panel truck. I wrote to Dean and told him. He wrote back a letter, a huge letter, 18,000 words long, all about his young years in Denver, and he said he was coming to get me and personally select the old truck himself and drive us home. We had 6 weeks to save up the money for the truck and began working and counting every cent. And suddenly Dean arrived anyway, 5.5 weeks in advance, and nobody had any money to go through the plan. I was taking a walk in the middle of the night and came back to my girl to tell her what I had thought about during my walk. She stood in the dark, little bag with a strange smile. I told her a number of things, and suddenly I noticed the hush in the room, and looked around and saw a battered book. On the radio, I knew it was Dean's High Eternity in the Afternoon Proust. I don't know. As in a dream, I saw him tiptoe from the dark hall in his stocking feet. He couldn't talk anymore. He hopped and laughed. He stuttered and fluttered his hands and said, you must listen to hear. We listened, all ears, but he forgot what he wanted to say. Really listen, ahem, look, dear Sal, sweet Laura, I've come, I've gone. But wait, yes. And he started with a rocky sorrow into his hands. Can't talk no more. Do you understand that it is, or might be? But listen. We all listened. He was listening to sounds in the night. Yes, he whispered with awe. But you see, no need to talk anymore. And farther. Why did you come so soon? He said, looking at me as if for the first time. So soon, yes, well, no, that is, I don't know. I came on the railroad past cabooses, old hard bench coaches, Texas. I played the flute and wooden sweet potato all the way. He took out his wooden potato flute. He played a few squeaky notes on it and jumped up and down in his stocking feet. See, he said, but of course, Sal, I can talk as soon as ever, and I have many things to say to you, in fact, with my own little pigtail mind. I've been reading and reading this gone. Browsed, all the way across the country and taking a great number of things I'll never have time to tell you about, and still, we haven't talked of Mexico and our parting there in fever, but no need to talk. Absolutely, no, yes. Alright, we won't talk. As he started telling the story of what he did in LA, on the way over in every possible detail, I visited a family, had dinner, talked to the father, the sons, the sisters, what they looked like, what they ate, their furnishings, their thoughts, their interests, their souls. It took him 3 hours of detailed elucidation, and having concluded later, Arkansas, crossing the train, playing flute, play cards with my boys, my dirty deck, won money, blue sweet potato solo for sailors, long, awful trip, 5 days and 5 nights just to see you, Sal. What about Camille? Gave permission, of course, waiting for me. Camille and I all straight forever and ever. And to Naz, I want her to come back to Frisco with me and live on the other side of town, don't you think? Don't know why I came. Later, he said in a sudden moment of gaping wonder, well, and yes, of course, I wanted to see your sweet girl and you, glad of you, love you as ever. He stayed in New York 3 days, and hastily made preparations to get back on the train with his railroad passes, and again across the continent, 5 days and 5 nights in dusty coaches and hard bench commies, and of course we had no money for another truck, and couldn't go back without him. With Inez, he spent one night explaining and sweating and fighting, and she threw him out. A letter came for him, care of me. I saw it. It his most constant, most embittered, and best-knowing wife Camille, and I thank God for him. At last I saw him. It was under sad and strange circumstances. Remy Boncour had arrived in New York after having gone around the world several times in ships. I wanted him to meet and know Dean. They did meet, but Dean couldn't talk anymore and said nothing, and Remy turned away. Remy had gotten tickets for the Duke Ellington concert as the Metropolitan Opera, and insisted Laura and I come with him and his girl. Remy was fat and sad now, but with the eager and formal gentleman. He wanted to do things the right way, as he had emphasized, so he got his bookie to drive us to the concert in a Cadillac. It was a cold winter night. The Cadillac was parked and ready to go. Dean stood outside the windows with his bag, ready to go to Penn Station and on across the land. Goodbye, Dean, I said. I sure wish I didn't have to go to the concert. Do you think I can ride to 40th Street with you? He whispered. Want to be with you as much as possible, my boy. And besides, it's so darned cold this here in New York. I whispered to Remy. No, he wouldn't have it. He liked me, but he didn't like my idiot friends. I wasn't going to start all over again, ruining his planned evenings as I had done at Alfred's in San Francisco in 1947 with Roland Major. Absolutely out of the question, Sal. Poor Remy, he had a special necktie made for this evening, and on it was painted a replica of the concert tickets and the names Sal and Laura and Remy and Vicky, the girl, together with a series of sad jokes and some of his favorite sayings, such as, "You can't teach the old maestro a new tune." So Dean couldn't ride uptown with us, and the only thing I could do was sit in the back of the Cadillac and wave at him. The bookie at the wheel also wanted nothing to do with Dean. Dean, ragged and in a moth-eaten overcoat he bought specially for the freezing temperatures of the East, walked off alone. And the last I saw of him, he rounded the corner of 7th Avenue, eyes on the street ahead, and bent to it again. Poor little Laura, my baby, to whom I told everything about Dean, began almost to cry. Oh, we shouldn't let him go like this. What'll he do? Well, Dean's gone, I thought, and out loud I said, he'll be all right. And off we went to the sad and disinclined concert, for which I had no stomach whatever, and all the time I was thinking of Dean, and how he got back on the train and rode over 3,000 miles over that awful land, and never knew why he had come anyway, except to see me. So in America, when the sun goes down, and I sit on the old broken-down river pier watching the long, long skies over New Jersey, and since all that raw land that rolls in one unbelievable huge bulge over to the west coast, and all that road going, and all the people dreaming, and the immensity of it, and in Iowa, I know by now the children must be crying in the land where they let the children cry, and tonight the stars will be out, and don't you know that God is Boo Bear? And don't you know that God is Boo Bear? The evening star must be dropping and shedding her sparkler dims on the prairie, which is just before the coming of complete night that blesses the earth, darkens all rivers, cups the peaks, and folds the final shore in, and nobody knows what's going to happen to anybody besides the forlorn rags of growing old. And I think of Dean. I even think of old Dean, the father we never found. I think of Dean. The end. We got the beginning and the end of the book. I'm gonna cut this one off here. I hope you enjoyed that strange reading. I really loved it. I wish I knew what happened in parts 2, 3, and 4. But no doubt it is a beautiful tale. I love Kerouac's language. That was really gorgeous. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're fast asleep, and I hope you've been fast asleep for a long Sweet dreams. Thanks for tuning in.